Well, friends, as we get ready to begin our open discussion, I'm just curious if anyone tried any enthusiasm practices or had like a Mussar experience from the last week that they would like to share. Yeah, Nancy.
Yeah, you mentioned how you're dressed today, and I actually had a recording and video session last night because I'm going to be doing a solo on Sunday. And so yesterday was the first day that I put on makeup because I was being videoed. I had a whole new outfit, and I walked out of my house feeling so enthused, and I walked differently. I met people where I went, and everybody was like, "Oh my gosh, like you look fantastic. This is a pandemic. We're at home. Have you lost weight?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I've lost 30 pounds where everybody else is gaining." And I had to trust myself, and I had to love myself and know that my recording last night was going to be awesome. And when you have those feelings in yourself and you dress appropriately, it really does make a difference.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. So putting that extra energy into dressing, showing up as your full self, as the self that you love, that you have confidence in, really made a difference for you, it sounds like. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else care to share an experience? Wendy.
Well, is it okay for me to tell them about our experience, Carol? Okay, good. Well, we had realization that sometimes enthusiasm means overcoming computer devices, because we have been sharing we're Mussar study partners. And it just seems like every Monday something comes up. This Monday, we're supposed to meet at 12, and I couldn't get on to my internet, which meant hours on the phone with Spectrum and Apple. And so it was 12:30, and I said, no, I love our study time. I'm going to just go and put a Zoom on, and then I'm just going to email Carol, and maybe she'll get it. And she did, and we went on later than we were supposed to, but we were both pretty enthused. Sometimes it just takes perseverance, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. Enthusiasm is one of those traits that can just kind of help us keep going when stuff starts to happen. We can persevere. Well, thank you. Any more? We can take one more if someone wishes to share an enthusiasm.
I had something.
Yeah.
I had something. I have a friend who's been kind of alienated from our community, our Jewish community. And he's kind of, the left of the left. But he's been a friend for a long time. And our newspaper is very kind of be moving more to the center, left of center, our Jewish community paper. And the editor I really like. I think he's been writing about things that are really important. And then he covers the whole community, all the different segments. But I think he's been doing a good job. So my job was to introduce my friend Ira to Lee. And I've been kind of hesitating. I knew I was going to do it. And when I did it today, I was sure-footed. I knew exactly what I wanted to do, and it felt really good. So I was enthusiastic with Lee, and then I told Ira that you're ready to call.
Great. Wonderful. Well, thank you. Okay, well, that's a nice way to kind of tie off. It's glad to hear there was some follow through from people, and these things show up in ways that are both expected and unexpected. So today, we are starting to focus on trust. And the initial question, this comes to us from Rabbi Cantor Allenton Westcott in the Mussar Torah commentary for the section on Exodus, kind of right after crossing the Red Sea, into some other stuff which we'll get into later. But she asked, how do we know we're going in the right direction? How do you know? How do you know if in the direction in your life that you're kind of going in the right direction? Harry.
Well, before you know what direction you're going, you got to know where you are. One of the things was, as a financial advisor, when clients used to come to our office and we used to talk to them, we used to ask them, have you ever been lost? And everybody would say, sure, we've been lost. And then I would ask, have you ever been lost with a map? And they would say, they thought about it and says, yeah, well, I could be lost with a map. And why can you be lost with a map? Well, very simply, a map doesn't do you any good unless you know where you are. And that's where it starts. And then you decide where you want to go. And I guess that's where you're headed, is how do you know which direction you're going? And that's up to you, I guess. But you got to know where you're starting from. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't understand where they are and they're going.
Harry, yeah, I totally hear you, Harry. Let me ask you, is this something that you kind of incorporate into your life, or you really try to think about where you are and remember where you are?
Absolutely. That's your grounding, so to speak.
Yeah.
If you don't know where you're going, any road's going to take you there. It's another famous saying.
Sure.
So that's my contribution for that question.
Okay. So who else? How do you know where going? Most of us have been around the block a few times, have had different phases in our life. How have you known, or how do you know when you're going in the right direction? Shelley, you're on mute still.
Sorry, I was having technical difficulties a few minutes ago. So for me, when I know I'm going in the right direction, is because I've usually gone through, I always call them a dark moment, where I'm reflecting on something, and we're all going through learning processes, and we're all going deep because we have all this free time to explore our own psyche. And so it's once I've kind of come to that position where I'm feeling a sadness about something, but I've realized that even in that sadness, there's really two choices. You rather become happy or you don't. You go the opposite and you end it. And if you really want to end it, you end it. But for me, that's when I get that rush of knowing I'm going in the right direction, because I've had kind of an aha moment, so to speak. And then the next part is like, well, thank you for giving me that information, because, I'm going to apply it to everything now that I'm around.
So sometimes it has to do with getting an aha moment, and maybe after a struggle, or after a time of some personal challenge or sadness.
Yeah, exactly.
One moment.
Nobody else.
Does anyone else have something they'd like
Well, I was going to say, sometimes it's easier to know when I'm going in the wrong direction, because of those things like I'm not feeling so great, or I'm getting too uptight about this, and, have no equanimity, or, I'm losing my keys again. It's like all those things make me know I'm missing something here, So then, I have to recalibrate or something, and say, okay, I need to get back on track if I'm off track. Maybe I need to watch what I'm eating more. Maybe I need to reach out to people more. I got to make sure I took my medication every day, because like last week I missed 2 days and it was like not in a row, but it's like, that's like the first thing I do in the morning. So how did I manage to do that twice? So it's that kind of thing.
You have a canary in a coal mine. When things are sort of going off, you start losing your teeth or getting stuff. I'm thinking a little bit back to what, Wendy, yes.
I know this is going to sound strange, but I hear voices. Now, I know no one wants to. I have a lot of intelligent people around me, people like Harry who are financial advisors, and a lot of lawyers and some doctors. And, sometimes they'll just ask a question. I'll be wanting to go in a certain direction, and then they'll ask a question that brings wisdom to me by answering for myself. And like teachers, well, just like Greg is a teacher, and then like my study partner, Carol, just something will come to mind when somebody else says something. And that's what I mean by I hear voices.
Yeah, so it's almost like, we could call that an inspiration comes to you, something triggers you, and it brings some kind of an inspiration, maybe gives you some direction. I was thinking about what a lot of people have said, and starting with what Harry said, and trying to relate that to the Mussar journey. And it feels like when we're practicing Mussar, we're trying to find out where we are spiritually and trying to become more awake and more empowered to make decisions. Because, I don't know, it strikes me that I agree that it can be easier I think it is easier to maybe tell when we're off track and things start going wrong in our life. But I think it is much harder to tell when things are going right, because sometimes we can be just drifting along. They're not going wrong, but they're not necessarily going right either. And are we sort of fully engaged in taking active ownership and making active decisions to kind of stay on the right track? I don't know, what do people think? Is that part of the picture? Is that something that's important to do?
To be in.
Linda.
It's a good question, and it's kind of a hard question because it requires some self-awareness and willingness to look inside. And I was thinking about goals, and I'm interacting with another person. I know when I'm saying too much, and I know when I'm not engaged enough to say anything. So there's this spot in the middle where I feel balanced. And that's when I know. Can't always do it.
Thank you. Well, this question is sort of leading us into our conversation about trust. And trust is, you may know, it's not like trusting another person. It's like trusting in the divine. It's like trusting in the universe. And one of the assumption that I picked to go with our exploration of trust is this idea that we're driven between the evil inclination and the good inclination. And one of the things the evil inclination tries to do is to get us off of that right path. I might use tools like our ego or fear or jealousy or just desire. And, there can be a healthy desire, like, the story about getting dressed up and wanting to, sorry, let me stop showing this again. the story that that Nancy shared, where she kind of got dressed up for her thing and she felt great, and that was very healthy and empowering. But there's other ways that that could get corrupted into vanity and dressing up, you know, in ways to, you know, which could be, you know, a little bit less healthy. And so that's where the evil inclination can sometimes kind of turn things around, you know, to try to get us off of, you know, what had been a more positive path. Any thoughts or comments about that? Agreement, disagreement?
Greg, can you restate it? I didn't quite understand what you were saying.
Okay, thank you, Lainey, for asking me that. So we have, you know, this inner conflict between the good inclination and the evil inclination. And the good inclination, that's things like our compassion, our ability to cooperate with others, our caring about other people. And our evil inclination, it's more of like our selfish impulses. It is, and one of the ways that that comes out is it also is one of the things that can kind of get us off of that right path. Like the evil inclination doesn't really want us to be kind of growing and evolving, and it tries to kind of get us off track. So if there's a path in front of us which might help us grow, it might put some fears in our way. Or it might put some insecurity or some jealousy in the way. Or it might be desire. Well, I could keep volunteering here, but if I, you know, work extra hours at my job, you know, maybe I'll make some more money, you know, even though we don't need that money. So these are kind of some of the ways that we can sort of, the evil inclination can kind of almost seduce us off of kind of that healthy path. Does that make more sense?
Yes, I just trying to get the connection with trust.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. What's the connection with trust?
Oh.
Nancy.
I've been reading some books as well as some Mussar books, and I just finished one last night. And they said, like, our biggest hindrance is fear, and that so many of us live with fear that we're not even aware of. And I looked at that, and I think this is the path that does not lead into the right direction. And so I've taken some steps lately to say, and also the book was talking about really accepting and loving ourselves. You could say you do, but you don't know what that really means. And once you really get it, then the fear is lost, and then you take more risks. So the danger of that, the trust, is that if you have fear guiding you, you're not going to be trustful. If you leave the fear behind and send out love and feel it yourself, there's an amazing transformation. And I've noticed that. I've reached out to people, and the just the relationships and the contacts that have happened would not have happened if I didn't have that trust and that lack of fear. And I think that's what kind of drives us in the wrong direction, is that fear.
Well, do you mean the fear of being vulnerable? In other words, to be open? Is that the fear?
That's definitely one of the things, but there's also the fear of the unknown, you know, the fear of being rejected, but you're not going to know until you actually try it, is what they were saying. So why live in a state of fear? You know, at least if you try something or be vulnerable or be rejected, you're going to know. Then you move on.
Yeah, Nancy, and I think you're talking about a connection between fear and worry too. Like sometimes it could be subconscious, sometimes worries can come up, or it's just all of these, it's like almost like a bone that we're gnawing on, where like all these worries sort of go around in our head. And again, these are usually driven by the evil inclination. So I haven't forgotten the question about the connection to trust, and Nancy started to to answer that. But one of the things that we're getting here is that when what I'm hearing is that when we're kind of giving into fear, we're living a life of fear, we can really get off track. It's funny, a few years ago, I took a class from the Mussar Institute where we looked at a lot of the negative soul traits and then their countervailing positive traits. And one of them, we spent a month on fear. And I had never thought of myself as someone who was driven by fear. I never actively felt afraid. Unless I was like, in a height, I'm afraid of heights and stuff like that, but like in types of situations. But once I really started studying it, I realized I have all kinds of fears. They just didn't show up as fear. They would get twisted into anger. They would get turned into like other procrastination, or they were all these sort of tricks that took place, and sort of realizing that, whoa, I'm afraid. I have things that I'm sort of actually worried about. I actually am really worried about what people think about me. So those sorts of things, sort of understanding that, kind of, again, back to Harry's analogy, understanding where I am today. I could be trying to grow as a person, but until I understood how much fear was holding me back, I was kind of in the dark. So one of the ways that I sometimes can tell that I'm on track is, for lack of a better term, I get signals from the universe. And if you read the email this week, I talked about this idea, the Kronjak test by Daniel Kronjak. The idea that if you're creating a source sheet for teaching Torah or Jewish studies, you should have at least one female source. And when I looked over these past teachings, I didn't find any. I might have 10 or 12 quotes and not a single woman among them. And so I said, okay, I'm going to try to do better. So I looked at this book by Marilyn Saltzman. It's a grandmother's journey, how her dealing with her two adopted grandchildren really taught her a lot about Mussar. It's a wonderful book. And she reached out to me a few years ago. I wrote a blurb for her for the book. I didn't read all of it. I looked at a couple sections. It was really neat and well written. So today I said, okay, let me look in Marilyn's book. And I look up trust. And what do I see? Like at the top of the page is she quoted me. So I don't get quoted in a lot of books, so to me, this was like, I took this as a signal from the universe that, okay, I was on the right track. That, and it's not like a rational thing, and maybe there's some psychologists could explain it, but to me, that feels like, okay. So with that being said, can somebody read what it is, and I read, because it's kind of hard to read the little box. I put it there. Can someone read this definition of trust that I put forward?
I will. The goal of trust is to let go of worry and control, to learn that whatever happens to you whatever happens, you will be able to deal with it. Great.
Thank you, Joanne.
You're welcome.
Okay, so this is part of the answer to Harry's question, and maybe a big part of it. It's letting go of worry and control. So what does that sound like to you? Letting go of worry and control. Carrie.
I had an example of that didn't really realize it until a friend of mine pointed it out. When we moved here to the Cape a couple of years ago, on the same day that my husband's last day of his job, and he did not have a new job, we closed on the house and we had no place to live. So, but I wasn't upset about it. I really felt that things were going to be okay. You know, I got on the phone, I found a place to live. He got on the phone, and within a couple of weeks, he had a new job. Everything started to fall into place, and I was telling all this to a friend of mine, and she says, I would have gone nuts, but you had faith in the process. And I said, I guess so, yes. I guess I had faith that we had the tools, the universe was going to be helping us along, and things would work out. And it did. So it was a nice feeling to realize that.
Thank you, Carrie. And I think that's a great phrase for sort of talking about what trust or Bitachon is really about, this idea that the universe is going to help us along. But the traditional phrasing is, it's trust in the divine. Trust that God is on your side, and there's stronger and less strong versions of that. And today within this community, we take a very expansive view about whether that's like the universe. But it's this idea that ultimately, things are going to be okay. And, for you, that was also sort of it was like trust that you were going to be able to handle the situation, and some stuff happened and you handled it. Yeah, that's wonderful. Carol.
I'm terrible at decision making. I get exceedingly anxious, get kind of crazy. One of the biggest decisions I ever made in my life, and one of the best ones, maybe the best decision I ever made, two things happened. Number one, I've been taking horseback riding lessons from this lovely woman, Donna. And Donna told me she was going to retire and that she was no longer going to be teaching at the riding school. Maybe I should consider leasing a horse or taking from another instructor. And then also my mother died in October. Donna was going to retire in December. Well, Donna said, well, there's this mare that's coming up for a lease. You might want to look at her. I really don't know anything about her. But I heard about her from my trainer, and you'd be working with my trainer. So I went and I tried this horse out, and I thought, if this mare wanted to buck me up, she could do it in a heartbeat. But well, any horse could. I'm not that good a rider. But I got this mare in an arena where somebody else was running another horse, exercising another horse on the end of a long line. Okay. And this horse had not been out for a couple of weeks. So he was running around, bucking, jumping, going crazy. And I got on this mare, and she just sort of looked at him and got on with business. And I said, this could be a good decision for me. So I rode her. She was a little bumpy, not the most comfortable thing to ride, but there was something about her. I just felt good about it. So I said, okay, yes, I will do it. And the owner said, or the instructor who was showing her to me, trainer, said, well, the owner has several offers and she'll get back to you. And I can't remember if she was watching or what. I thought, well, this decision I'm going to have to make. She's probably going to reject me, probably going to want some young, really good rider or something on this mare, but whatever. She called me and she said, I would like you to lease my horse. I had this mare for 8 months, and then she decided to sell her out from under me, but that's a whole other story. She needed the money, I think. But it was the best decision I ever made. I loved this horse, and she loved me, and it was an experience I would not trade for anything, even though I lost her after 8 months, and that was extremely sad, and to this day I will miss her. But it was a very difficult decision to make, because it's a very big responsibility to take on the care of a horse. I wasn't doing it full time. I had her 3 days a week. I shared her with somebody else. But I was so anxious and so crazy before I made the decision that I had so much fear about it. And then I said, okay, I made the decision. I have Donna who's going to back me up. She'll help me out with my moral support. I'm going to be working with her trainer, who's fabulous. I have to have some faith that this will work out. And as I say, best decision I ever made in my whole life, I think, was to get to know this beautiful, wonderful horse.
Well, thank you, Carol.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And I
Trust is hard for me. This is a tough one, Greg. So yeah, it's a big one.
It is a hard one. Yeah, Gail, I saw your hand.
Yes, the second part of that sentence is actually one that speaks more to me. Whatever happens, you will be able to deal with it. When we covered trust in our VOD, people had real problems with trusting in God or the universe or the divine or anything like that. But what we all came to agree was we could trust in ourselves. None of us are 20 years old. We've all gotten through situations. It may not always turn out okay. Some things might turn out very badly, but I'm going to get through it. And so the trust that we realized we were developing through our lives was in ourselves. I can handle whatever is dished out to me and I can get through it. And that's kind of where we ended up feeling we could trust.
Thank you, Gail. Yeah, that's, I do think that's a very powerful formulation. I guess because I wrote it and your group came to the same place. But, you know, there you have it. I wrote it and somebody quoted it. So therefore, you know, it's, you know, there you have it. Take that one to the bank. Linda.
I don't have a good story to go with this, but once I discovered the role of patience in all that we're talking about, it made a difference. I wasn't in a hurry to change myself or to change the situation. I knew that there's some things that you just have to try your best and then wait it out. Patience.
Thank you, Linda. Yeah, that's a very much a big part. A lot of these soul traits interact, and having patience to just kind of wait it out and know you can wait it out, that's key. Eileen.
You know, it comes to me that none of us live in a silo. It's all relationships and relational things that we're going through. And there's one expression that really bothers me, and it has to do with trust too. Often people say, what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. And I think we've all heard it. Yeah. And I don't trust that statement. I think a lot of people are destroyed by other things that people do by not being able to express their needs and their feelings, or I should say their feelings and their needs in concrete and compassionate ways.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a lot of these little not so helpful aphorisms that are running around out there. And I agree, that one's not very helpful. I want to go back to the text here again. And I want to come back to one of the stories in the Marilyn Saltzman book. But before we do that, I just want to have a quick review of Exodus at a very high level. So we crossed the Sea of Reeds, right? Huge miracle. What happens? The people start grumbling about water. You know, God could part the sea, but oh my God, we're gonna die of thirst in the desert. So they got some water. There's worries about food, and then God starts providing manna. It's this substance which comes down from the sky. It was very nutritious, but there was this rule: you could only gather what you needed for the day. You couldn't keep it to the next day. You had to trust that it was going to be there. Except for Shabbat, where you gathered a double portion on Friday so you could eat on Shabbat. And a lot of people were kind of hoarding. And it was, it's not all that unusual for people who have had food insecurity to kind of save some extra. You know, like kids in foster care will often take an extra roll at dinner and sort of keep it for later because they don't trust. And so one interpretation of this is that the divine was actually trying to train us a little bit, that they could trust in something beyond their immediate needs. So in Marilyn Saltzman's book, she is talking about her adopted grandchildren who were a brother and sister from Ethiopia who had a lot of food insecurity. And she was talking in this chapter about how in the initial days, after when they first would come to visit her, they would sort of eat everything, and they would, eat till they were over full. But then gradually they actually became a little bit pickier eaters, and they wouldn't eat everything, and they wouldn't sort of take food that they didn't need. And so at the conclusion of the story, she shares this, whoops, sorry about that. Where get back? Oops, I'm going in the wrong direction here. So can I have a volunteer to read this second paragraph here? Lainey.
Okay, if my grandchildren could find bitachon, trust, despite their early traumas, perhaps I could relinquish some of my worry and anxiety, trusting in a source of strength larger than myself. Marilyn Saltzman.
Thank you. Okay, so she's introduced another level. We sort of talked about, Gail was talking about this level of sort of trusting in yourself. And here she's saying, well, could I, maybe if my kids could overcome their trauma, or my grandkids could overcome these traumas, to learn a bit of trust, could I learn to maybe trust something beyond myself, or trust something larger than myself? So what do we think? Is that something worth cultivating, or do we want to focus on cultivating the self-trust? What might that mean, to think about trusting something bigger than ourselves? Shelley, I don't know if you're on mute. I don't know if you're.
Yeah, I am muted. Sorry. It just reminded me. I always trust in the divine. That's my rule. I ask myself, whenever something comes to me, I always ask myself, where does this originate from? And if it's the fear, let's go to that first moment where you've had that fear, so you can let go of it and move forward. So I always say to the divine, I am willing, and you can use me however you want to. So.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I was going to say that I guess it was a friend who said something about believing in the abundance of the world rather than its scarcity. And, it's like an outlook, or believing like that God's going to provide what you need, or the universe will. But it's just a different attitude, like compared to people who are hoarding and afraid or feeling a fear of scarcity. It's like such a calming, more centering feeling to feel like there's plenty. I mean, maybe there's times when there's not plenty, but thank God there is plenty here, and so we shouldn't be so afraid.
Yeah, thank you. I think this sort of scarcity mindset is one of the things that can induce fear. And, the marketers love that. I used to be a marketer. You say, hey, there's only 3 left.
Yeah, right.
Sale ends tomorrow.
Right.
Making time scarce, making goods scarce, when reality is there's abundance.
Well, but right now, we're doing this whole program because of the crisis we're going through. And right now there's been things with toilet paper and Lysol wipes and all sorts of things that just don't exist. And you can go to 8 stores in a day virtually and not find what you need. And you do get into a panic because there's a sense that there is not plenty, that you're not going to find what you need.
Yeah, that's the challenge, because sometimes things are scarce. And, can we keep, the challenge is, could we keep an abundance mindset even in times of scarcity?
Yes, and I want to say one more thing about that. because maybe you can't find Lysol wipes, but this is like what you were saying about marketing. But there might be some off-brand. I mean, I've seen in the supermarkets all these different, you know, non-bacterial wipes and sprays and hand sanitizers, and you know, maybe there's not this brand of toilet tissue, but there's some other brand. And
Yeah,
also,
I
I've
mean,
been
some
more
of
into
the
making my own.
substitutes you can make,
You
but
can also
sometimes
make your
yeah,
own
yes.
cleaners, your own shampoo. You know, get a big bottle of Dr. Bronner's and use that for everything practically.
There's so much that we have that we can do without if we need to, or
Right.
you know, it just
Right.
you think,
Also,
oh, I can always get that, and then suddenly you can't get it. You go, oh, well, what can I use instead?
right.
Because I can't go shopping, I've learned to do that with my food. Okay, this recipe, whatever, calls for blah, 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 but I don't have blah, 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 but I have this.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but I understand, because in the early days of this, I did feel the scarcity.
Yeah. So we're going to hear from Carrie, then we're going to head to our breakout group. So Carrie, did you have your hand up?
Mm-hmm.
No? Okay. I want to just also point out that, of course, when we're talking about there's abundance of stuff in the world, and then if we put on our spiritual hats, you know, we could talk about the abundance of positive energy, the abundance of, you know, benevolence, or abundance of, you know, people to help us. There's a lot of ways that we could think about, you know, trust in this context. Now I'm going to take us in a slightly different turn, and we're getting a little pressed for time, so I apologize for that. But I was, you know, we had Simchat Torah, and this week is Bereshit, and we're starting. Can you see the slides here?
Mm-hmm.
I am trying to actually expand this. I don't know if this will make it any bigger for you, but this is a picture from my synagogue from a few years ago of the Torah scroll.
No. Wait.
And it goes all the way around the very big room. And then here's a picture of my wife and I and my friend Bob, you know, helping to hold up the Torah very gently. And there's a lot of cycles in Judaism, you know, and I was thinking, I was actually doing a meditation, and I had this image, and like I was thinking just going around and around. And so my question is there like some level of trust, you know, about the regularity of some of these cycles in Judaism? You know, the cycle of a new day, the cycle of the Torah beginning again, you know, and is this, I'm just curious, is this any form of comfort for you? I mean, I didn't grow up sort of thinking about Judaism in this way. I was very disconnected from a lot of these cycles. And so sort of a question that I'm thinking about is there some, you know, maybe opportunity for kind of comfort in these sort of cycles? Like, despite everything, we still had a service for Yom Kippur, you know, despite, you know, so that's sort of the idea. So I am creating the breakout rooms. So please, we'll probably only have about 5 minutes today, but check in and just sort of talk about what comfort you might get from these various cycles. Hello, I see people are starting to come back. We've got about another 20 seconds or so before the rest of the rooms close.
I pressed my button in error too quickly.
Oh, that's what happened, because I'm sitting there. Why did we get yanked back 59 seconds in advance?
I'm sorry. Yes. yes, yes, Gail.
All right, thank you for explaining, because I was blaming Greg.
Oh, no,
Yes, well,
don't
that's
blame
Greg called
Greg.
us back too soon.
Thanks, Gail. I appreciate that.
You've come to these sessions enough to know, Gail, that that does happen more often than I would than I like to admit. I'm curious what insights people came up with. You know, is there did anybody talk about this idea about comfort in the Jewish cycles, or is that a way of building sort of trust that it's going to be there? I'd love to kind of hear.
There's comfort in ritual as it is, the repetitive nature of something. It reaches you at an emotional level because there is safety and security. It's going to recur. You can count on it.
Yeah.
So not just the seasons, but all of our ritual.
Even within a service, sometimes when a rabbi takes the liberty of bringing in a new tune without letting the congregation know, it's like, what is going on? You know?
Yeah.
Especially during this time when you reach out for familiarity and, you know, an anchor of what's going to ground you. And we had a conversation about that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
We talked about. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I find the cycles very comforting. I was saying, you know, the Shabbos comes every week, and it used to be that I could leave when I was working. I could leave work early on Friday in the fall and winter. And that was a great, wonderful thing. And having that day of rest. And this, I love that, you know, we just did Simchas Torah, and we had a wonderful celebration outdoors. And we had children, and we had a take-home kiddush. It was fabulous. But I mean, I just always also love that we finish the last chapter of Deuteronomy, and then we go right to Bereshit and I listen to you know, some insights on it, and it just gives me great comfort also to know there's always something new in the Torah you can find in a parsha that you didn't see last year. You know, you read something that somebody inside is like, oh, how about that?
And I want to make sure we get a chance to hear from everyone who'd like to share. Carol, I know you had a comment.
Oh, I was just going to say, Nancy and I talked about how we're quite comforted really by the natural cycles, but the Jewish calendar is being a lunar calendar is based on what I call real natural time, because all other time is created by us, but the season, the moon, the so forth are created by the universe, by God, by whatever. And that there's a comfort in that, but there's also a comfort in marking those with holidays, celebrations, and observances. That's about it. Let somebody else say something.
Great, thank you. Well, I have one more thought I want to share with you as we head into our closing meditation. This again goes back to Rabbi Cantor Allison Wiscott from the Mussar Torah commentary, who provided our opening. And she wrote that the Mussar emphasis on bitachon, trust, invites us to consider that the road in front of us is the right path, because the divine is waiting for us. So again, this is another, I think this is such a beautiful idea, and it's almost an extension of this idea that whatever happens, we'll be able to handle it. And, you know, maybe if we think about it this way, it's because we'll have some support. We'll have a cheerleader there to accompany us and help us along wherever that road may lead. So please get comfortable in your chair once again and close your eyes. Taking a deep breath through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. And imagine yourself walking down a path. In every direction, there's one side, there's a beautiful orchard. On another side, there's a field of flowers. And as you go further, you walk past the beautiful river. As you walk, you feel the strength and the companionship, knowing that you're not walking alone. And then the path heads into a forest. It's dark. There's spiders. There's strange noises. But that presence is still with you. You feel calm and confident walking your path. And after just a few minutes, you're through the forest. And once again, the landscape opens up to a bright meadow and lake. Now a moment of gratitude for those who have accompanied us on this journey today and these last months as we've formed community together. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to put into the chat a link to that book by Marilyn Saltzman. If any of you are interested in it, I really enjoyed the parts that I read today, and it seems like, Marilyn was a regular person who kind of got interested in Mussar and found that it really changed and influenced her life with her grandchildren. Thank you, Carol, for your comments about the meditation and Robert Frost.
Yeah,